Hey, Straight Draw here, and some folks in our clan have been asking about how to do wind adjustments, and after we posted some videos and suggested YouTube, they said we're still not getting it. So I decided to create this animation and a follow-on video to show people how I think it works, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take this target and turn it into a tape measure, right? So how does that work? Well, the scaling factor is the important thing. We're going to pick that up from a wind chart, and that tells us how many miles per hour each of these rings is accounting for, right? So when our scale factor is 2 for our club, that means that each ring represents how far the ball would move if there was a 2 mile per hour wind, right? If there's a 2 mile per hour tailwind, instead of landing dead center in the middle of the landing zone, it's going to land exactly one ring further along, right? And if we had a 4 mile an hour tailwind, right, and the scaling factor for our club was 2.0, then it would land at the edge of the blue ring, and 6 miles per hour would land at the edge of the red ring. So we can use our 2-finger spin zoom so that we always have the wind arrow, right? We want the wind arrow pointing due north. Why? So we'll be able to start at the bottom of the white ring and put that on top of the take shot box, right? The take shot box will be here. And we'll be able to use that orange take shot box as the bottom. And then we'll be able to use the rings like a tape measure. So let's see if we can kind of show how that works. So, oh, and one thing before we move on. So bigger clubs and lower accuracy clubs have larger rings, right? So their targets are a lot bigger on the course. And the more accurate we get and the closer we get to a pitching wedge, the target gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's why we need a wind chart for our clubs, because even our clubs change as they get to different levels, and so these scaling factors are going to come from a wind chart. And we'll talk about how to get those later. I'll do a video on that. But let's just suppose that we know for the first shot we're going to take that this is my Apocalypse level 4, and it has 1.7 miles per hour per ring. And the first shot we're going to look at, I'm adjusting for a 10 mile per hour wind. Well, let's switch into shot mode, right? So the idea is that we are going to use our 2-finger spin zoom to make sure that the wind arrow is pointing exactly due north. Why? Because that will let me move the target south to correct for the wind, no matter which direction it is. And south is perfect because the bottom of my bullseye target is right on top of my take shot box. And as I move it down, I can see how far I'm getting up the tape measure. Okay, so here's what we've got. Let me bring this over, right? So the idea is this is the amount of wind we need to correct for, and you can see it's just less than 6 bars, right? So on these videos, you'll hear me or GC Tommy will be talking about how many rings we're adjusting for. Well, in this case, it's about 5.8 or 5.9 rings. 6 rings would be 10.2, and we need to do just a little bit less, so 5.9 rings will work. That's how we use our tape measure. So now we're going to look at a second shot. And the reason I'm calling them first, second, and third is because there's going to be a video right after this in the playlist that takes these shots. So you'll actually see the wind adjustment in the actual playthrough video. So the second shot we're going to look at is my quarterback level 10, and its scale factor is 1.1. So every ring is 1.1 mile per hour. All right, and so we have to adjust for 11.1 miles per hour, and since it's 1.1, our 10 rings represent exactly 11 miles per hour. So honestly, you're really just going to do 10. You can try to get 11.1, right? You can try to get that extra tiny little bit there. That's fine. If you can manage that, that's great. This is a good point in the video, though, to talk about the fact that this is an estimate, right? We're trying to get within 0.1 or 0.2 on our calculation and get about that close. It's hard to get much closer, especially when time is running down and it's a high pressure shot and there are a lot of adjustments to make. So please just remember that this is an estimate. Also, the scaling numbers we get from our wind chart are also estimated. These were figured out by players way smarter and better than me who estimated them from gameplay and looking at replays. So everything's a little bit of an estimate, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get close. You know, if we do this correctly, we can give a lot of shots, like short iron shots, 50-50 or even slightly better than 50-50 chance of going in. So it's an estimate, and it's not perfect, but it can be really, really good. So this 11 miles per hour would be exactly 10 rings. By the way, I'll just mention this, that there are different ways that people do 10 rings. And you'll hear some people tell you that they're going to adjust 5 rings first, right? So they'll go to the middle. Sorry, that's not the middle. They'll pull down to the middle of the target and then set the bottom back at the top of the take shot box and then pull another 5. What I tend to do is I tend to use my 2-finger pinch and I zoom in a little bit so that effectively this ring is smaller on my screen, so that I'll pull and I'll keep pulling. So that's where my finger will be. I'll start pulling and I can pull through, and then here near the bottom of the shot box, that's where the top of my white ring will be at the top of the shot box. And so some people do it different ways. You'll see in just a second. For shot 3, for shots 4 and 5, we have more to do, and so we're going to have to do multiple adjustments. Shot 3 is my Grizzly level 8, and normally it has a 1.0 scale factor, so it's real easy. It's just 1 mile per hour per ring. But this one is playing somewhere between medium and minimum distance. And so medium distance is about 1.1 and minimum distance is about a 1.4 scaling factor. So I played this one as a 1.2. And by the way, it's a guess. You get a feel for it. So I guessed at 1.2. And so if I'm trying to do a 1.2 scale, right, the idea is how many marks up the tape measure do I have to go? Well, what I try to do is I try to think of it this way. What number times 12 would be close to 106? Well, 9 times 12 is 108, right? So I know that 9 bars here, my 9th bar would be 10.8, right? That's what I'm figuring out. And so that's what I did. I did 9 bars. I know it's a slight estimate. You know, you could try to do 8.9. You can try to do just slightly less than 9. But on this one, I actually just tried for 9. So for shots 4 and 5, we're going to talk about elevation. What does that mean? Well, you'll hear GC Tommy talk about elevation a lot, and he'll say something like the shot is downhill 10%, downhill 20%. And that's the way most people talk and write about these. And what that means is when you shoot the ball and it's going downhill, it means it's going to carry further. It's going to stay in the air longer, and therefore it's going to be affected more by the wind. If it's going to be affected more by the wind, it's like the wind is blowing harder when you're shooting downhill. So we have to increase this number here, right? This number has to go up. Well, in the shot we're going to look at, the wind is 10.3 miles per hour. That's fine. But it is playing like 25% downhill. And again, these are estimates. So what I did is I was like 10. I can do 25% of 10. 25% of 10 is 2.5. Right? So what I'm actually doing then is I'm adjusting for about 12.8, right? So that's the actual wind that we're trying to correct for. It's up to 12.8. And so, again, with my scaling factor of 12, I know that 10 times 12 is 120, so I'm going to be just a little more than 12. And then the question is, how do you do that, right? I have this extra little bit. Well, what I tend to do is I tend to estimate it, right? So there's actually a little 0.3 gap in here, and I tend to just leave the white ring of the target just a little bit, right? Just try to leave it there. Instead of on the take shot box, just try to leave it a little bit above it to get my 0.3. And then I can do a 10.3 by bringing the very top edge of the target ring down to the top edge of the take shot box. Other people, and I've done it other ways myself, but you might want to do a 5 adjustment and then do a 5.3 so you pull the target twice. Again, if I have plenty of time, I'll pull the target twice. That's not a problem. Um, but there are various ways people do it. The final shot that you're going to see me adjust in the video that follows this one is my Hornet level 8. And it's going to be a medium distance adjustment of 1.2. So I didn't really explain that. Your club, when you print out a wind chart, you're going to have 3 numbers. You're going to have max, medium, and min. And that will come through better on the video, but I'll be sure to show it on these shots where we're not using the max distance of the club. I'll show you how you figure that out in the next video. So for now, we're taking this shot using a scale factor, again, of 1.2. It's a Hornet, which would normally be 1.0, but or 1.1, sorry. And we're trying to correct for 13.3 miles per hour. However, we've got a big issue. This one, I'm estimating, plays 30% downhill. Okay, so here you have to do some math, right? So, and by the way, I got it wrong. This is funny. Those of you who know me in the clan chat know that I'm a math professor and I love game theory and I teach that course. So the fact that this may give you a chuckle too, or the fact that I actually got the math wrong, and I'm a math geek, is hilarious. But the first thing I did was 3 times, right? This I need 30% extra. So I did 3 times 13 to get 3.9. So I know I need to add 3.9, which is about 4. So basically what we're doing, if you watch the wind miles per hour, we're correcting for 17.3 miles per hour. And then here's where I made the mistake. I tried to figure out how many bars I needed, right? It's more than, right? I was trying to figure out this extra distance between 10 and whatever this is. And it should be 14 and a half, right? If you take 17.3 and divide by 12, 1.2, you get 14 and a half, and I actually corrected for 5 and a half. But anyway, you'll see that in the video, but this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out how many total rings. And how did I do that? Well, you'll see in the video, the first thing I did was 10, right? So I took, sorry about that, I set the bottom ring of the bullseye target on top of the take shot box, and then I moved it until the just tippy top edge of the white ring disappeared below the take shot box. And then I did this last, again, I did 5 and a half, and I think it's only 4 and a half. But we'll see that in the next video. So just to wrap up and consolidate, right, the idea is that we are going to figure out the right wind number to adjust for, and that's going to include elevation, usually downhill. There are a couple of uphill holes or uphill shots in Golf Clash, but mainly 90% of the time, there'll either be no adjustment or it'll be a downhill adjustment. And once we have added in the elevation, we are going to use our bullseye target as a tape measure to measure off that many mile per hour on the course. Hope that made sense. Again, each one of these shots is actually going to have a video playthrough in the next video. So this is Straight Draw. Play free, have fun, out.